good morning and welcome back to another video. It has been some time since we've been in the garden and quite some time since we've done a gardening video, so we thought we would take advantage of being up on the farm nice and early on a nice cool summer's day to do a bit of work in the garden. We're going to give you a bit of a tour of what's growing, and then we've got a few tasks to get done as well. I've got some irrigation to do, Kylie's got a trellis to build, we've got a few tidy up bits and pieces to do as well, and we'll try and show you as much of it as we can. But people have been asking what's going on in the garden, and so today we're going to show you. Good morning, my love.
Good morning.
Can you explain what you're doing?
Protecting our peppers before they start fruiting. Well, actually they've started fruiting. Last year we didn't put shade cloth up early enough or enough of it, and they get really sun damaged. It might be okay actually, there's so much foliage on there, so that's protect. Oh no, there's one down there. It's there.
Yeah, sunburn beginning.
The sun comes from this side in the afternoon and it's fierce, and so I wanted to get this up before it gets too damaged and before the fruit gets too big. These ones have just started. What is it, mid-July now? So we've still got 6-8 weeks of pretty harsh sun. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Last year we also just had canes, not these wooden posts, and it was very difficult with the shade cloth. It just kept collapsing on the plants, which we don't really want. Made it really difficult to see what was ready and what wasn't. So I think this solution will work a bit better. I guess we'll see.
Whoa. So while Kylie cracks on with the shade cloth installation, what better place to start the tour than right in the middle of the garden, and we can talk you through some of the types of peppers that we've got. We've got quite a selection this year, and we have cheated in almost every case.
Not cheating.
Apparently it's not cheating.
Being efficient.
It's being resourceful and efficient. We bought many of these plants from a local garden centre, mostly because we've had real trouble this year growing things from seed. I don't know if it's just because we've been so busy and preoccupied elsewhere. I actually think we've had some issues with the compost. We bought this special germination compost from a brand called Ciro. I've heard other people struggle with it a little bit as well. It was fine for us last year, but this year it's really not been so good. And so a lot of the things we started from seed, peppers, tomatoes, even things like lettuce and squash and courgette, we really struggled with. So we bought a lot of these pepper plants, different colours of bell peppers, red, green, orange. I think there might even be a yellow one as well. We've got some padron peppers, which we grew last year from seed and turned into lots of chili sauces and chili related things because we left them on the plant for too long and they got really, really spicy. We're going to try and harvest these ones a little bit earlier and enjoy them in the traditional way, kind of fried in a pan until they get nicely caramelized and then served with a bit of sea salt. Really, really delicious. One of my favorite accompaniments to like a barbecued meal. So we've got bell peppers, padrons, we've got some chilies as well in here. Again, a plant that we bought. And we've got a couple of long kind of pointy peppers as well. They're slightly sweeter, really, really tasty. Something that you might have spotted in the background of some of the shots of the peppers is the melons. Now the melons have gone crazy this year. We've got so many, particularly the watermelons, and we've just kind of let them go wild. So melons, like many of the summer fruiting crops like tomatoes, cucumbers, even courgettes and stuff like that, benefit from being pruned, but I haven't really learned how to do it yet. So we've just decided to embrace the chaos and let the plant grow. We have pruned back some of the leaves because they were encroaching on the other beds and making it very difficult to walk around and check on the fruit to see if it was ready to harvest. But we've got loads and loads of melons, I think 4 different varieties. There's definitely a watermelon, we've got a Gallia melon, there's one with a dark green skin, but I don't know the name of it. And on the other side of the garden, we had another melon plant and a space to put it in. So we've got one over there as well. I don't know what variety it is. So it'll be a nice surprise when they all come ready to harvest. But I think we have lots of melon cordial in our future. And I'm thinking about trying to do a watermelon beer as well, because we've got to find something to do with all this stuff. And they take up quite a lot of space in the fridge or the freezer. But yes, this whole bed behind me, apart from the 1 or 2 tall kale that we've still got in here from earlier in the season, it's all melons. What's up next?
This bed is a bit of a mixed bed and it's doing really well. So here we have some red cabbage, and the hearts are developing really nicely. And I'm using the big outer leaves to feed the chickens because they quite like it. And this year we haven't had too much bug damage. The beetle, fly, larvae thing, whatever it is.
Flea beetle.
That's it, flea beetle. We don't normally grow brassicas because they get attacked, but these have done well.
They have, I'm really surprised.
And we have some purple sprouting broccoli, which is also doing really well. So we tried some of these over the winter and the spring, I don't remember when. And I thought I'd just give them another try. And there was many more in here. I think I put 8 in. And they were tiny because the growing from seed we've not been very successful at. But as soon as I put them in the ground, they just took off. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm not too sure that 4th one's going to make it. The aubergines, however, are doing amazing. And where did I put my pruning shears? There's one down here that I can get to. We've not tried this variety before, but it's a nice long aubergine as opposed to the ones like this, which are round, which is what these other 2 are. So I'm very happy with these. We've already had quite a few of these already. I'm hoping that we will get a lot more aubergine. One thing that we did last year that was really good, which I'd never tried before, you slice the aubergine, you put it in a dehydrator, dehydrate it, then you stick it into freezer bags and stick it in the freezer. And then when you want to use them, you bring it out and you soak it in a sauce or just water, and it rehydrates, and then you can cook with it. It's not exactly the same texture as a fresh aubergine, but it goes in curries and all kinds of things really, really well, and it absorbs that curry sauce. So that's what I'm hoping. We'll have lots of aubergine so we can fill our freezer.
Although our freezer is still full from last year's courgette harvest and this year's cherry harvest, and a whole bunch of other frozen vegetables that we've put in there for preserving them without having to do lots of canning and stuff like that, which works really well because it doesn't take any time at all. You just chuck it in the freezer, but it does end up taking up quite a bit of space. But even though we've not really focused on the garden this year, we've been very focused on the house renovation work, we've still got lots of great stuff coming out of the garden, particularly at this time of year. And I think these are my favourite kinds of things to grow. The fruiting crops, where you put a plant in and it just keeps producing for weeks and months, and you get to enjoy those harvests for a long period of time. Next up, we've got the tomatoes, which I think is by far our favourite crop of the year, because they grow so well, they taste so good, so different to anything you can buy in the supermarket, and there's loads of interesting varieties, and we've got quite a few in the bed behind me, and we actually have a second bed of tomatoes a bit further down, which we'll show you in a second. And from everything we grew last year, and we did a lot of canning and preserving as well, tomato sauce and curry sauces with tomato in were by far the most popular thing that we've already run out of. But the good news is we've got loads of tomatoes cranking out of the garden now, all sorts of shapes and sizes, and even colours as well. Most of the tomatoes that you can see behind me were purchased from plants, small plants, or in some cases like little mini plug plants that we put in the ground. And it just gave us a really good head start because all of the stuff that we did from seed was going so slowly. We did get some from seed, and they're a couple of beds down. And as much as the growing tomatoes from seed didn't really go to plan, it's quite nice that we've got almost like a succession planting. We've got loads of tomatoes which are ready now, and then towards the end of the season, we'll have loads more in the other bed. So down here, we've got loads of cherries, and these are just prolific. There's so many trusses on here, and they're really big as well. All ripening up even quite high up the plant here, which is really cool. We've got some nice round ones as well. But then this is one of my favorites. This is Corazon de Bois, or ox heart tomato. Really fleshy, not too many seeds, and works great in a sauce or on a sandwich. But then we found these really interesting blue tomatoes, or that's what they're called in Portuguese at least, tomate azul. And we saw them in one of the farm shops and picked up, I think, maybe 2 or 3 plants, and they've done really well. They're like an heirloom variety. They start green like normal tomatoes, and then they go purple on top, and then as they ripen it gets red underneath. And so it's really interesting. It's quite similar to the Corazon de Bois, very meaty, fleshy kind of tomato, not too many seeds, and just a bit different, and we like that kind of thing. More tomatoes.
So these are the ones that we did grow from seed. I think I did 2 trays of seed, and we've managed with 8 plants out of that. Yeah, it hasn't been as successful as we would have liked, but they are now coming on. We talked about we're going to try the Florida weed, and we've been trying it over here, I'm not finding it particularly successful because the tomatoes are just so heavy, and maybe we're not just weaving enough, but the hybrid approach of staking and weaving works really, really well, both from a pruning perspective and also from a harvesting perspective and keeping it all out of the paths and everything. These guys, I think, are the bushier variety, so I'm still going to do the same thing and just see how that works for this variety. I think it will still be okay. We will just prune differently.
There may be the bushy variety, or they may just need pruning.
We haven't really pruned much for a couple of weeks. It's been too hot. But yeah, this combo has worked really well this year, and I'll probably try it again next year. It's a semi-success, let's call it. Better than the strings, for sure.
So most of our no-dig beds are at the top of the garden, and I say top because it's on a bit of a slope as it goes down the hill. But last year we put in a couple of beds going in the other direction, down at the bottom. And these are mostly going to be for perennials, which don't need as much attention, which is why they're more out of the way, further away from the house. And one of the things we put into a long bed that goes all the way across the garden is asparagus. And so this is its first full year of real growth, so we haven't been harvesting any of it yet, and we have to wait a little bit longer to do that. I think maybe we can get some next year, but then the third year is when we'll be able to have a really good first pick. And so we did these asparagus no dig, like everything else that is in this section of the garden. We just put some crowns in and let them grow. We don't even water them that much, but they've done really well. They just popped up loads of spears and they've all kind of fronded out. Interestingly, one of the plants has got lots of berries on it, but everything else is just fronds. So I'm really happy with the way that this is going, although it is definitely one of those delayed gratification type projects. The other 3 beds that we've got down here we made earlier this year, and again they're going to have lots of perennials in them. We've got some strawberries in one, some lemongrass, some dill I think. We had some courgette that we planted here, but they have just shriveled up and died because of the heat. But we do have one pumpkin plant down here which is doing quite well. So we have one more bed to talk about.
And this is a surprise bed because everything I planted in here I did not think was going to work. But they've done really well again. We have in here one extra melon plant. Again, I think this one we grew from seed and I was not expecting it to take. And it has taken, and it's taking over the garden. And then 2 cucumbers and 3 or 4 loofah plants. Now I tried loofahs last year and I planted them over on the boundary fence, and they were much more established plants before I transplanted them. This year they were tiny, like this big, and I was like, oh, I'll just put them in and see. And they've all, I think one died. But a difficult plant to grow because they don't like being transplanted, but you need to grow them out of the bed. We'll see if I get any fruit. And the next thing I need to do is I need to put a trellis in because they need to grow up a trellis to allow the fruit to kind of hang down. I'm going to do the same thing with the cucumbers. That I need to do today because they're already too big for being on the ground. And also in this bed, we have one mystery potato plant that popped up because this is a bed that we had potatoes in. We obviously missed a potato and it has shooted up and grown. And similarly, in the other bed where the tomatoes are, we have 2 fava bean or broad bean plants that started where we must have just left a couple of broad beans on the ground and they have shooted. So let's go build a trellis.
Well, before you do that, can you explain for anyone who doesn't know what a loofah is, and is it a fruit you can eat?
Okay, so it's in the cucumber family, cucumber squash, marrow family. They eat it a lot in like India and Sri Lanka and that part of the world. But mostly here, or why I'm growing it, is if you leave it to dry, it becomes the loofah that you use in the shower as a body scrubber. And I want to replace all of our scrubbers in the shower and the kitchen with loofah sections rather than the plastic sponge type stuff. And I was really hoping last year because the 7 plants that I had were like nice and big and happy, and they all just died. We had no irrigation there, and it was a much hotter summer last year. This year so far, touching all the woods, hasn't been too bad. And they're looking really nice and healthy, and they're getting watered much more regularly. They love the sun, they love the hot weather, but obviously last year I just didn't water them enough. Crossing fingers, and then I can also save the seeds so I can go again. I got these seeds from a friend of mine who had 1 or 2 fruit on her plants 2 or 3 years ago. And when we get the fruit, I'll show you.
Yeah, Kylie mentioned we had potatoes in this bed, and we did have potatoes, but we didn't have many. We did them the same way this year as we did last year. We did no dig potatoes. But yeah, the problem here was voles or moles or some kind of burrowing creature. They went to town on our potatoes. We did harvest a few, but we harvested them a bit early. We saw all the plants dying back, which is sometimes a sign that they're ready. But in this case, I think it was a sign that the voles and moles and underground burrowing creatures had feasted and all the plants started dying. So it was a bit of a disappointing potato harvest. And we don't have any footage to show you of it, unfortunately, because it was so sad. So we'll give you the whistle-stop tour of the raised bed garden, which has been establishing now for over a year, about a year and a half. So in the first bed here, we have some strawberries. They are not doing so well. We had lots of fruit from them in April, but since then, I think they got a bit choked by the weeds and haven't been producing so well, which is why we started the other strawberry bed at the bottom of the garden, which we showed you earlier. So not much to report in here, other than strawberries need a bit of love. The herb bed. We did some work on this in a previous video when we planted a bunch of herbs that were in pots up by our tent, and we put them in here along with some flowers which we had planted last year and we thought weren't perennial, along with some flowers which we'd planted in here the year before. We didn't think they were perennial. We've also got some flowers in here which we planted last year. Should we try again? We've also got some flowers in here which we planted last year. We didn't think they were going to be perennials. Next up, we've got our herb raised bed, and there's a few flowers in here as well, but they have done incredibly well. The echinacea in particular has put off some huge shoots and some really beautiful flowers, although I think they're probably past their best now. So we've started to kind of clear this out. Ultimately, all these flowers are going to go into a beneficial hedgerow that's going to go all the way down the side of the garden. We'll put in all sorts of things that have nice flowers for the bees and all the other insects and stuff like that, the beneficial insects. But that is going to be a project for another day. But we actually showed some of the planting of these herbs in a previous video, and they have come on incredibly since then, particularly the basil. We've got some basil plants which we bought from the supermarket, but we've also got some Thai basil and some purple basil. They're doing really, really well in the hot weather. We've got some really nice chive plants with some lovely little purple flowers on the end. I like putting those in salads just to add a little bit of colour to the plate. What else have we got in here? The thyme isn't really growing too much, nor is the rosemary, but they have both established really well. The one that's a real surprise, and perhaps a mistake to put into a raised bed, is the lemon verbena. This was a tiny little plant when we put it in a few months ago, and it has gone crazy. And I think I'm probably going to have to dig it up and put it somewhere else so that it doesn't overtake things too much in here. It's also not really a herb. It's something that I tend to use for making tea rather than for putting into food. But I really, really like the flavour. So we'll try and rescue that out of here and find somewhere else for it to go. And then finally, we've got our L-shaped bed where we typically put all of our kind of salads and stuff like that. So lots of lettuce, lots of chard, lots of beetroot, spring onions sometimes. We had some radish in here, but we did those from seed. They took too long to get going, and then they kind of bolted almost as soon as we put them in the ground. We've got a chili plant in here. There's also some oregano, which probably needs to go back into the herb bed. But we've harvested a lot of stuff out of here recently for chicken food, as things like lettuce and rocket and stuff like that doesn't do too well in the summer. So there's quite a few holes in here at the moment, but we will try and fill it up in due course. And that's the raised bed garden.
Top just with the
How far
tiny
from the
bit of
top?
overhang. Yeah, that's good enough. No, let's do the top.
Top, top, top.
Top bar, yeah. Something like that.
Do you want a level?
Yeah, that kind of height. Is it a little bit overhang?
Yep. About the same as last time.
Yes, I'm a perfectionist, whatever.
Rain was on the forecast for today, but I didn't believe it. But now I believe it. It's always funny that I end up doing irrigation stuff while it's raining.
The plant moved so that this can sit. No, yeah, okay.
A little bit, yeah. Oh, this is very fiddly when it's wet.
Little cucumbers in it.
Can you explain your trellis to me and the lovely people?
It's a trellis.
Great. Moving on.
The idea is that when they get to this side, they start to cling on and they grow up here and the fruit drops down on the other side. So it's rather than it spreading out on the ground or instead of having to put it up a stick, it just grows up here naturally and then all the fruit goes through there and then you can harvest from the other side very easily, and you can see when you've got fruit because it all kind of drops through the mesh. I don't know if this is the right size mesh, but we'll see. This is very much an experiment. It's a very rustic build to see if this actually works. If it does, then in the future I'll build some more nicer looking permanent structures that can stay in place all year round. These are just to see if it works.
And I guess you could plant something on the other side.
Yeah, so often people put lettuce, and we put some lettuce plugs. If we don't have enough space in the raised beds, they can go under there. You can also do the same thing with a melon, but I want to test this first. If this works, then maybe next year we'll try more trellises with melons. And the same thing, the melon then just kind of hangs in the air. You can put some supports or just let them hang. You need to get some straw under our melons.
It's just started raining again, so seems like a good time to test the irrigation. And I can hear water. That's encouraging, I think. Hey. So the irrigation in the bottom 3 beds is working nicely. We use the same system that I used in all of the other no-dig beds. We've got like a header line that runs all the way along the length, and then off that I tee off and put a little isolator so that we can turn a bed on or off. And all that header line has got no kind of pre-cut holes in it, but then the stuff that we put in the bed has got drip holes every 33 centimeters, and that can deliver 4 liters of water per hour. And all of the tube is 16 millimeters, which makes it easy so that all the connectors are the same, depending on whether we're using the one with drip holes or without. Oh, it's like a little melon bed.
It's so full of seeds. We bought it to use as mulch, and it just produced so much grass and weeds. We've had it sitting for a year now, getting watered and then dying off. So I'm hoping that now most of the seed is either dead or grew and then died.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works, unfortunately. But, you know, good to be hopeful.
We'll see. Never-ending job.
What are we planting in here? The beans.
The beans. There we go. Let's see. Yes, I'm measuring. But only because I don't know what 40 centimeters looks like.
It's just over a foot.
Under and between the two screws.
Yes, I can.
A bit further over. Further?
How's that? Oh?
Yeah, so just because it's going to stick into us otherwise, this end.
Okay.
Can you go in more? Yeah. You move it out of the way?
I can. Yeah, that will definitely help. Because the sun's going to move over like that. There's a little square of shade here. It's going to move over. It's going to be beautiful. So there we go. We are done with our little bit of gardening for today, which is good news because the sun has come back out and it's getting warm again. So we're going to head off into the house to do some indoor projects. But we thought we would just wrap things up as we usually do. Maybe we'll just give you a quick recap of what we did. So what did we do?
So we did a trellis for the loofahs and the cucumbers. We added some stakes for the second round of tomatoes and did a bit of Florida weaving and bamboo staking. We planted some more lettuce, mostly for the chickens, some more cabbage, mostly for the chickens. We did a bed of bush beans, dwarf beans, and then also some pole beans on the other side of the cucumber loofah trellis. We added some irrigation down the bottom, which has been severely lacking for a little while. Harvested out some of the cherry tomatoes, gave everything a good tidy up. Put the shade cloth on the peppers. Gave the melons a bit of a trim, though they're still quite crazy. I think that's it.
Well, it's no wonder I'm exhausted. That sounds like a lot of work. But the garden is looking lovely, and that I think is one of the things that we enjoy the most about it. We are not farming. We are not doing this to be 100% self-sufficient or to grow everything that we eat. We do it for fun. And it's nice to take a bit of a break from the renovation work sometimes and come out into the garden, particularly when we get weather that is suitable for that, with a bit more cloud cover and even some rain in some cases. So I, for one, am feeling quite rested and ready to go and crack on with something else. No, that's a lie. I don't feel rested at all. I'm absolutely knackered, but it was a nice change of pace. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.